Sarah's finger hovered over the Book Now button as she sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by wedding planning notebooks and calculator receipts. The Malibu beach house looked perfect in the photos, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean, a wraparound deck, and enough space for her entire wedding party to stay together. At $400 per night, it was half the price of comparable properties she'd found on the major booking sites. The host, Michael Chin, had responded to her inquiry within minutes with enthusiastic messages about making her special weekend unforgettable. His profile showed dozens of five-star reviews spanning 3 years, with guests praising his attention to detail and the property's stunning views. "This place made our anniversary trip magical," wrote one couple. Michael went above and beyond to ensure everything was perfect. Another review gushed about the home's luxury amenities and prime beachfront location. Sarah had been planning this wedding for 18 months, and every detail mattered. Her fiancé David worked construction, and money was tight after paying for the ring and venue. Finding affordable accommodations for their wedding party felt impossible until she discovered this listing. Sarah video called her maid of honor, Jessica, holding her laptop up to show the listing. "Look at this place, Jess. It's literally perfect, and we can afford it." Jessica squinted at the screen, scrolling through the photos. "It does look amazing. Have you checked if it's legit?" The reviews are incredible, and look at his response time. He even offered to have fresh flowers delivered before we arrive. Sarah's excitement grew as she read Michael's latest message detailing local restaurant recommendations and offering to arrange a private chef for their group. The photos showed a gourmet kitchen with marble countertops, a master suite with panoramic ocean views, and a private hot tub on the deck. Michael had included a virtual tour video, showing himself walking through each room, pointing out amenities, and explaining the property's history. "My family built this house in 1987, he said in the video. "We've been hosting guests for over a decade, and nothing makes me happier than seeing couples celebrate their special moments here." Within an hour, she'd wired the $1,200 deposit to secure their dates, her heart racing with the possibility of a perfect beach wedding weekend. Over the following weeks, Michael's communication remained exceptional. He sent Sarah a detailed welcome packet with local vendor recommendations, tide charts for beach photography, and even suggestions for wedding ceremony locations along the shoreline. He offered to coordinate with local florists, arrange transportation from LAX, and have champagne waiting in the refrigerator upon their arrival. "I want your wedding weekend to be absolutely perfect," he wrote. "I've worked with many couples over the years, and I know exactly how to make this magical." Sarah showed the messages to her wedding planner, who was impressed by Michael's professionalism and attention to detail. The rental agreement looked legitimate, complete with detailed house rules, check-in procedures, and emergency contact information. Michael even provided his business license number and insurance documentation when Sarah's father requested additional verification. He sent additional photos of the property from different angles, including drone footage of the beachfront and surrounding area. When Sarah mentioned wanting to propose a toast from the deck, Michael sent specific details about the best timing for sunset views and offered to arrange professional photography services. 2 months before the wedding, Sarah decided to drive by the property during a weekend trip to Los Angeles with David. They'd planned to scout nearby restaurants and confirm the logistics Michael had described. Her stomach dropped when they pulled up to the address. The house existed, but it was nothing like the photos. The deck was rotting, the windows were boarded up, and a "for sale" sign swayed in the overgrown front yard. Paint peeled from the siding, and the front door hung askew on broken hinges. Weeds had overtaken what should have been a manicured lawn, and trash was scattered across the driveway. A neighbor working in his garden noticed their confused expressions. "You looking for the Chin family? They moved out 6 months ago. Bank foreclosed on that place after old Mrs. Chin passed away." David's jaw tightened as the reality sank in. "Are you telling me this place has been empty for months?" The neighbor nodded sadly. "Such a shame. It was a beautiful home before the family ran into financial trouble. Been on the market ever since, but it needs too much work." Sarah's hands trembled as she called Michael's number. Straight to voicemail. His messages had stopped responding 3 days earlier. She drove home in a panic, immediately calling her bank to report the wire transfer. Too late. The money was already moved to an overseas account. The investigation revealed that Michael Chan was using stolen photos from a luxury rental in Hawaii, creating fake reviews with purchased accounts, and had scammed over 30 couples out of their vacation deposits. The real property photos belonged to a $2,000 per night mansion on Maui's North Shore, complete with the virtual tour Michael had provided. Police discovered he'd been operating the scam for 2 years, targeting engaged couples who were planning destination wedding weekends. The fake business license and insurance documents were sophisticated forgeries that had fooled even experienced wedding planners. Detective Morrison, who handled Sarah's case, explained that these scammers often worked in networks, sharing stolen photos and fake documentation across multiple fake profiles. They specifically target emotional events like weddings because people are less likely to be suspicious when they're planning something special, he told Sarah during their interview. Sarah spent her wedding weekend in a cramped hotel room 20 miles from the beach, her dream celebration replaced by stress calls with lawyers and credit card companies. The hotel cost 3 times her original budget, and half her wedding party couldn't afford the last-minute accommodations. Her bouquet photos were taken against a parking lot backdrop instead of ocean waves. Her grandmother, who had saved for months to attend the wedding, ended up sleeping on a pull-out couch in Sarah's hotel room. The real Michael Chun, she learned, was a victim too, his identity stolen from a legitimate vacation rental business in Vancouver. When she finally posted her experience online, dozens of other brides responded with identical stories. Same photos, same charming messages, same British accent on the voicemail greeting, same heartbreak when their perfect weekend disappeared along with their money. The scammers had specifically targeted wedding parties because couples were willing to pay higher deposits and book further in advance, giving the criminals more time to disappear with the funds. Sarah's marriage survived the disaster, but the financial stress from the scam and emergency hotel costs took months to recover from, casting a shadow over what should have been the happiest weekend of her life. 2 years later, Sarah still feels anxious whenever she sees vacation rental listings, and the couple has never attempted to plan another special getaway. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in the cramped airplane seat, his 6-foot frame folded like origami as he scrolled through rental listings on his phone. The work conference in Austin was mandatory, but his company's travel budget was tight after the latest round of budget cuts. Hotel rooms near the convention center cost $300 per night, while a charming converted garage apartment just 15 minutes away was listed for $85. The photos showed exposed brick walls, a cozy kitchenette, and a small but stylish living space perfect for a solo traveler. His boss had made it clear that exceeding the travel allowance would come out of his own pocket, and Marcus was already stretching to afford his daughter's college tuition payments. The host, Linda Rodriguez, had immediately responded to his inquiry with detailed directions and offered to stock the refrigerator with local craft beer. Her profile portrayed her as a retired teacher who enjoyed meeting travelers and sharing Austin's hidden gems. The listing had been active for 3 years with consistently positive reviews praising both the space and Linda's hospitality. "I absolutely love hosting guests from out of town," Linda had written. "My little guest house might be small, but it's in the heart of East Austin where all the best food trucks and live music venues are located." The reviews were glowing, business travelers praising the clean space, convenient location, and Linda's helpful recommendations. One guest wrote, "Linda's place was exactly as described. She even left homemade cookies and a handwritten note with restaurant suggestions." Another mentioned how Linda had personally driven them to a music venue when their rideshare was delayed. Marcus appreciated the personal touch. His last 3 business trips had been spent in sterile chain hotels with no connection to the local culture. Linda sent him a detailed message about Austin's music scene, recommending specific venues, and even offering to help him secure tickets to shows happening during his stay. She provided her personal cell phone number and offered to meet him at the property for check-in if needed. The booking platform showed her response rate at 100% within 1 hour, and her overall rating was 4.9 stars from over 200 reviews. Linda even sent Marcus a hand-drawn map of the neighborhood with walking distances to various attractions marked in colorful ink. Marcus felt confident about his choice as he booked 3 nights and paid the $340 total upfront through the platform's secure payment system. Linda immediately sent a confirmation message with detailed check-in instructions, Wi-Fi passwords, and a personalized list of restaurants based on his mention of loving barbecue and craft beer. She even included recommendations for coffee shops with good Wi-Fi where he could work if needed. The attention to detail impressed Marcus. This was exactly the kind of authentic travel experience he'd been hoping for. Linda mentioned that she taught high school English for 35 years before retiring and now enjoyed meeting interesting people from around the world. Her messages were warm and articulate, filled with local history and personal anecdotes about Austin's transformation over the decades. She sent Marcus information about public transportation options, warned him about construction delays on certain routes, and even provided backup contact information for her neighbor in case of emergencies. The level of preparation and communication made Marcus feel confident that his trip would go smoothly. The plane touched down in Austin on a sweltering Thursday evening. Marcus collected his rental car and plugged Linda's address into his GPS, excited to drop off his bags and explore the famous 6th Street. The GPS led him through increasingly industrial areas, past abandoned warehouses and weedy vacant lots. Streetlights became sparse, and Marcus began to feel uneasy about the neighborhood. The address Linda had provided led him to a vacant lot behind a closed restaurant, nothing but cracked asphalt and a rusted dumpster surrounded by chain-link fencing. He circled the block twice, certain he'd made a mistake. His phone showed no cell service in the area, so he drove to a nearby gas station to call Linda's number. The phone rang once before connecting to a generic voicemail message that didn't mention her name. Panic began to set in as Marcus realized he had nowhere to stay, and hotel prices near the convention center had doubled due to a music festival happening the same weekend. He tried calling the booking platform's customer service, but they were closed until morning. Marcus spent that night sleeping in his rental car in a well-lit parking garage downtown, his suit wrinkled and his confidence shattered. The car's air conditioning barely worked in the Texas heat, and he woke up every few hours drenched in sweat and disoriented. He'd set multiple phone alarms to ensure he wouldn't oversleep and miss his morning presentation, but the stress and discomfort made real sleep impossible. The next morning, he discovered that Linda Rodriguez was actually a network of scammers operating dozens of fake listings across major conference cities. They'd timed their scams around large events when legitimate accommodations were scarce and expensive, targeting business travelers who booked quickly due to time constraints and budget pressures. The sophisticated operation included fake review networks, stolen photos from legitimate properties, and detailed local knowledge gathered from tourism websites and city guides. Customer service at the booking platform was sympathetic but explained that the investigation process would take weeks, and they couldn't provide immediate alternative accommodations. Marcus eventually found a room at an airport hotel for $600 per night, the only available option during the festival weekend. The unexpected expense blew his entire quarterly travel budget and earned him a stern conversation with his boss about financial responsibility and poor planning. His conference presentation suffered because he'd spent the first day dealing with the housing crisis instead of preparing, and he appeared disheveled and exhausted during what should have been a career-advancing opportunity. The experience taught him that even legitimate booking platforms could host elaborate deceptions designed to prey on budget-conscious travelers during peak demand periods. Marcus lost not just money but also professional credibility, and the stress of the situation affected his performance for the remainder of the conference. 6 months later, the booking platform finally processed his refund, but the damage to his professional reputation and personal finances had already been done. Retirement had given Thomas and Eleanor the freedom to explore places they'd only dreamed about during 40 years of teaching. Their modest pension allowed for careful budget travel, and vacation rentals offered them the chance to cook their own meals and stay longer in each destination. Eleanor had always been fascinated by English literature, and the idea of spending 6 weeks in the Cotswolds felt like stepping into her favorite novels. She found a perfect cottage through a vacation rental website, stone walls covered in ivy, a garden gate leading to rolling hills, and a description that promised the quintessential English countryside experience. The monthly rate of $1,800 was reasonable for their 6-week stay, especially compared to hotel costs for that duration. The host, James Whitfield, seemed knowledgeable about local history and hiking trails, responding to her initial inquiry with genuine enthusiasm about sharing his beloved countryside with visitors. His profile indicated he'd been hosting guests for over 5 years and had received numerous awards from the platform for exceptional hospitality. "The cottage has been in my family for generations," James had written in his initial message. "I take great pride in maintaining its authentic character while providing modern comforts for my guests." He'd included detailed information about the nearest village pub, walking paths to ancient churches, and even offered to arrange a private tour of nearby castles with a local historian friend. The photos showed a cozy sitting room with a stone fireplace, a country kitchen with an August stove, and a master bedroom with views of sheep pastures stretching to the horizon. James explained that his grandfather had built the cottage in 1923, and the family had carefully preserved its original features while adding modern amenities like central heating and reliable internet. Eleanor spent weeks planning their itinerary around James's recommendations, booking train tickets, and researching the local farmers markets he'd mentioned. He sent her additional resources about local history, including stories about the cottage's role in housing evacuees during World War II and its connection to a famous Victorian poet who had stayed there. The property listing included professional photos of every room, detailed descriptions of amenities, and even a virtual tour narrated by James himself, speaking with a warm British accent that immediately put Eleanor at ease. They wired the $5,400 payment for their stay 3 months in advance, as James had requested to secure their preferred dates during peak season. His communications remained warm and detailed, sending them packing suggestions for England's unpredictable weather and even mailing them a packet of wildflower seeds from the cottage garden along with a handwritten note about the best time to plant them back home in Ohio. Eleanor framed his note and showed it to their neighbors, excited about finally taking the trip they'd postponed for years while raising their children and grandchildren. James provided detailed arrival instructions, local contact information, and even arranged for a local taxi service to meet them at the train station. He sent weather reports and local event calendars, suggesting festivals and markets they might enjoy during their stay. The cottage listing had over 155-star reviews spanning 4 years, with guests consistently praising both the property and James's exceptional hospitality. One reviewer wrote about celebrating their 50th anniversary there, while another described how James had personally helped them locate a nearby hospital when they needed medical attention during their stay. James even sent Thomas information about local fishing spots, having noticed his interest in angling from their early correspondence. Their flight landed at Heathrow on a drizzly Tuesday morning. The train journey to the Cotswolds took 3 hours, and Eleanor spent the time reading her guidebook and imagining their weeks ahead in the countryside. Their hired taxi driver seemed confused when Thomas gave him the cottage address, checking his GPS multiple times and making several phone calls to dispatch. "Are you certain about this location?" the driver asked as they wound through increasingly narrow country lanes. The GPS showed they were approaching the correct coordinates, but something felt wrong about the isolated area. They pulled up to a burned-out shell of a building, its roof collapsed and walls blackened by what appeared to be a fire from months earlier. Charred timbers jutted from the foundation like broken bones, and yellow police tape fluttered from a nearby tree. The scene was devastatingly different from the photos James had shared. A local farmer emerged from a nearby barn, shaking his head sadly when he saw their confused expressions and heavy luggage. "That place burned down last Christmas," he told them. "Old electrical system finally gave out. Such a shame. It was a lovely cottage before the fire." The farmer explained that the property had been abandoned since the fire, with the insurance company and local authorities still investigating the cause. Thomas's hand shook as he tried calling James's number, but the line was disconnected. Their emails bounced back as undeliverable. The taxi driver, taking pity on their situation, waived his fare and drove them to the nearest village where they learned the devastating truth. The local postmaster confirmed that James Whitfield had never owned the cottage, and the actual owners lived in London and had been battling insurance companies over the fire damage for months. The real owners, the postmaster explained, were elderly themselves and had been trying to rebuild their family cottage but were stuck in legal proceedings. James had stolen the listing photos from the property's booking history before the fire and created an elaborate backstory to steal deposits from unsuspecting travelers. The sophisticated scam included forged ownership documents, fake local references, and even a false website designed to look like the area's official tourism board. Police Constable Williams, who took their statement, explained that cottage rental scams had become increasingly common, with criminals targeting older travelers who booked longer stays and paid larger deposits. Thomas and Eleanor spent their dream vacation in a cramped bed and breakfast that cost twice their original budget, watching their retirement savings disappear while trying to navigate international wire transfer disputes from a foreign country. They spent days in local police stations filing reports, dealing with language barriers despite speaking the same language, and trying to understand the complex legal process for recovering funds sent to offshore accounts. Their carefully planned literary tour of the Cotswolds became a nightmare of legal proceedings and financial stress. Instead of visiting the gardens and villages Eleanor had dreamed about, they spent their time in solicitors' offices and bank branches, trying to recover their stolen money. They returned home having seen little of England except the inside of police stations and legal aid offices, their trust in travel shattered along with their carefully saved vacation fund. The experience taught them that sophisticated scammers specifically target elderly travelers who book longer stays and pay larger deposits, exploiting their trust and limited familiarity with digital fraud protection. 2 years later, they've never attempted another international trip, their wanderlust replaced by fear and suspicion. Priya's final semester of graduate school was overwhelming enough without the added stress of finding housing for her summer internship in San Francisco. The university's housing office had already filled their limited summer rooms, and most apartments required year-long leases far beyond her 3-month budget. Her internship at a biotech startup was unpaid but crucial for her career in molecular biology, and her student visa limited her housing options to legitimate rentals with proper documentation. The pressure to find affordable housing was mounting as other students in her program had already secured their summer accommodations. A listing for a studio apartment in the Mission District caught her attention, $1,200 per month, fully furnished, with a description emphasizing its perfect location for young professionals. The photos showed a modern space with exposed brick walls, large windows, and a small but functional kitchen. Most importantly, the host specifically mentioned accepting international students and understanding visa requirements. The host, David Park, had responded to her student inquiry with understanding and flexibility about her unique situation as an international graduate student, immediately putting her at ease about the complex requirements she'd faced with other potential landlords. "I completely understand the challenges students face finding short-term housing," David had written. "I was in graduate school myself not too long ago, and I know how stressful internship housing can be, especially for international students who face additional documentation requirements." He'd offered to hold the apartment for her with just a $600 deposit and mentioned that several previous tenants had been students from her university's graduate program. His profile indicated he owned multiple properties in the area and specialized in housing young professionals and graduate students. The reviews consistently mentioned his responsiveness and understanding of student budgets and academic schedules. David explained that he'd struggled to find housing during his own graduate studies at UC Berkeley and now enjoyed helping other students avoid the same stress. He provided detailed information about public transportation to major biotech companies, grocery stores with international foods, and even study-friendly cafes in the neighborhood. The apartment listing included specifics about utilities, internet speed for video calls with advisors, and building security features that would help her parents feel comfortable about her safety in a foreign country. David even offered to provide documentation for her visa requirements and assured her that all rental agreements would be properly executed to meet international student housing regulations. Priya video called her parents in Mumbai to discuss the arrangement, showing them the listing and David's helpful messages on her laptop screen. Her father, always cautious about financial decisions, asked several questions about the security deposit and lease terms, speaking in rapid Hindi when he was concerned about particular details. David had anticipated these concerns, providing a detailed rental agreement and even offering to speak directly with her parents to address any worries they might have about their daughter living alone in America. "Your daughter will be perfectly safe in this neighborhood," he'd assured them during a video call that lasted nearly an hour, patiently answering their questions about local safety, transportation, and emergency procedures. During the call, David showed them around the apartment via video, pointing out security features and explaining the building's access system in detail. He discussed the neighborhood's safety statistics, proximity to public transportation, and even mentioned the Indian grocery store just 2 blocks away where Priya could find familiar foods. He provided references from previous Indian students who had rented from him, and when Priya's mother asked about emergency contacts, David gave her the information for a local Indian community center and temple. Convinced by his professionalism and the apartment's perfect location near her internship, Priya wired the $1,800 for first month's rent and security deposit. David sent her detailed arrival instructions, building access codes, and contact information for local services she might need as an international student, including information about setting up a local bank account and getting a local phone plan. She arrived in San Francisco on a humid June afternoon, her life packed into 2 large suitcases and a backpack, exhausted from the 15-hour flight and 7-hour layover in London. The rideshare from the airport cost $45, eating into her carefully budgeted funds that had to last the entire summer. The address David had provided led to a rundown apartment building with broken windows and graffiti covering the entrance in multiple languages. The buzzer system was destroyed, and several mailboxes hung open with scattered mail blowing in the hallway like urban tumbleweeds. Construction barriers blocked the main entrance, and a notice from the city health department was posted on the door citing multiple code violations including structural damage and pest infestations. An elderly woman sweeping the front steps noticed Priya's confusion and heavy luggage. "Looking for someone, honey?" When Priya showed her the rental agreement, the woman shook her head sympathetically. "That apartment's been vacant for months, sweetie. Landlord's been trying to renovate it, but the city shut down the work for permit violations. Nobody's lived there since the last tenants were evicted for non-payment." The woman explained that the building had been in legal disputes for over a year, with multiple code violations preventing any new rentals, and that several other young people had shown up with similar rental agreements over the past few months. Priya spent her first night in San Francisco sleeping on a bench in the international terminal at SFO, too embarrassed to call her parents and admit she'd been scammed, and too broke to afford even a hostel room. Her internship stipend wouldn't start for 2 weeks, and the money she'd sent to David represented her entire savings from part-time campus jobs and family contributions that her parents had sacrificed to provide. She felt completely alone in a foreign country with nowhere to go and no way to contact the man who'd stolen her money. The airport security guards eventually asked her to leave, explaining that she couldn't sleep there without a departing flight, and she wandered the city with her suitcases until she found a 24-hour diner where she could sit safely and use the Wi-Fi to search for emergency housing options. The kindly night shift manager, Maria, let her stay until dawn and even brought her free coffee and a muffin when she realized Priya's situation. Through online student forums, she eventually found a cramped room in a graduate student house share for twice her original budget, forcing her to take on weekend catering work to cover the rent. The additional work hours conflicted with her internship responsibilities, and the stress affected her academic performance during the crucial final semester of her program. Her faculty advisor noticed her exhaustion and declining work quality, which jeopardized her chances of receiving strong recommendation letters for PhD applications. The experience taught her that desperation makes anyone vulnerable to elaborate deceptions, and that scammers specifically target students and young people who have limited resources and experience navigating housing markets in expensive cities. The financial stress nearly forced her to abandon the internship entirely, potentially derailing her career before it began. Even after finding alternative housing, the trauma of that first night in San Francisco haunted her for months, and she developed anxiety about travel and new situations that affected her confidence in pursuing international research opportunities. The notification from the vacation rental app made Carlos's phone buzz as he sat in his cubicle, dreaming of escaping another Chicago winter. His cousin Maria's wedding in Tulum was 6 months away, and he'd been tasked with organizing accommodations for their group of 8 college friends who'd stayed close since graduation. The beachfront villa in the listing looked like paradise. Infinity pool overlooking turquoise water, outdoor kitchen perfect for group meals, and enough bedrooms for everyone to have privacy while still being together for the celebration. At $500 per night split 8 ways, it was surprisingly affordable for such luxury considering the wedding was during peak season when most properties commanded premium rates. The host, Sofia Mendez, had responded to his inquiry within minutes, offering group discounts and suggesting local activities perfect for a wedding celebration. The villa's photos showed marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a rooftop terrace with panoramic ocean views that looked perfect for toasts and group photos. Sophia mentioned that the property was newly renovated and specifically designed for groups celebrating special occasions like weddings, anniversaries, and milestone birthdays. "I host many wedding parties," Sophia had written in perfect English with occasional Spanish phrases that added authenticity. "My villa is designed for groups who want to celebrate together while enjoying privacy and luxury." I'll personally ensure your stay is unforgettable and that your friend's wedding celebration is everything you've dreamed of. Her profile showed years of hosting experience with consistently excellent reviews from other wedding groups and celebration parties. Guests praised the property's attention to detail, the stunning location, and Sophia's exceptional hospitality that went above and beyond typical rental expectations. One review mentioned how she'd arranged a private beach dinner for a surprise proposal, while another described her helping guests navigate local customs and recommendations when they wanted to experience authentic Mexican culture. Sophia provided detailed information about local wedding photographers, restaurant reservations that could accommodate large groups, and even offered to coordinate with the wedding venue for transportation logistics. She sent Carlos a comprehensive guide to Tulum's best restaurants categorized by price point and cuisine, cenotes for group adventures, and cultural sites worth visiting during their stay. The listing included professional photos of sunrise from the terrace, the villa lit up at night with string lights, and groups of happy guests enjoying the space for various celebrations. Carlos organized a video call with his friend group to show them the listing, setting up his laptop in his apartment while his friends joined from their respective cities. Everyone was immediately sold on the villa's perfect combination of luxury and value. "This looks like something celebrities would rent," his friend Maria exclaimed during the call. "How did you find something this amazing for that price during wedding season?" Sophia had even offered to arrange airport transportation in a luxury van, stock the kitchen with groceries and local specialties before their arrival, and provide recommendations for activities that would accommodate their group's varied interests and energy levels. She provided sample menus for group meals featuring local ingredients, contact information for private chefs who could prepare traditional Mexican cuisine, and suggestions for activities ranging from adventure excursions to relaxing spa treatments. The group enthusiastically agreed to book after 2 hours of excited planning, and Carlos collected everyone's share of the $4,000 deposit through a payment app, feeling proud of his organizational skills. Sophia's communication remained excellent throughout the booking process, sending detailed information about local weather patterns, packing suggestions for both beach and cultural activities, and even helping them coordinate with the wedding venue for transportation and timing logistics. 2 weeks before the trip, Carlos decided to video call Sophia to finalize arrival details and discuss last-minute arrangements like grocery preferences and activity bookings. The number went straight to a disconnected message. Her messages on the platform had stopped responding 3 days earlier, right after his last payment installment. Panic set in as Carlos tried alternative contact methods, eventually discovering that the villa photos were stolen from a luxury resort's marketing materials. The stunning infinity pool and marble floors belonged to a $2,000 per night resort in Costa Rica, not a private villa in Tulum. The address Sophia had provided didn't exist on any map, and the local tourism board confirmed that no vacation rental properties were legally operating at that location. Google Street View showed the address led to an empty stretch of beach with no structures visible for miles. Carlos faced the devastating task of calling his friends to explain that their dream vacation was a scam, and they had just 2 weeks to find alternative accommodations during peak wedding season in one of Mexico's most popular destinations. The group had already taken time off work, bought plane tickets, and purchased new clothes for their tropical celebration. The group ended up scattered across different hotels and hostels, their carefully planned celebration fragmented by broken promises and financial stress. The available accommodations were either far from the beach, prohibitively expensive, or completely booked, forcing some friends to share cramped rooms or stay in less desirable areas hours away from the wedding venue. Their cohesive group experience became a logistical nightmare of coordinating between multiple properties, with different check-in times, varying amenity levels, and complicated transportation arrangements. Instead of the seamless villa experience they'd planned, they spent their vacation dealing with booking confirmations, ride shares between locations, and trying to find common spaces where they could gather as a group. Carlos learned that destination wedding scams specifically target groups of young adults who split costs and rely on a single-point person for planning. The combination of group dynamics, time pressure, and limited budgets makes wedding parties particularly vulnerable to elaborate vacation rental fraud designed to steal deposits and destroy special celebrations that can never be recreated. The financial loss strained friendships within the group, with some members struggling to afford the last-minute hotel costs and others feeling resentful about the situation. The stress overshadowed what should have been a joyful celebration of their friend's wedding, and the group's close friendship dynamic was permanently altered by the financial and emotional stress of the experience. The sun was setting over Lake Geneva as Maya scrolled through vacation rental listings on her laptop, searching for the perfect family reunion venue. Her extended family gathered every 3 years, and this time it was her turn to organize accommodations for 25 relatives ranging from her 89-year-old grandmother to her 3-year-old nephew. The responsibility felt overwhelming, but she was determined to create a memorable experience that would accommodate everyone's needs and budget constraints. The lakefront mansion in Wisconsin looked ideal: 12 bedrooms, a large kitchen for family meals, and a private dock perfect for her grandfather's fishing obsession. At $800 per night for the entire property, it would cost each family just $35 per night when split among everyone, making it affordable even for the relatives who were struggling financially. The host, Jennifer Walsh, had immediately responded to Maya's inquiry with enthusiasm about hosting large family gatherings. Her profile indicated she specialized in multi-generational group rentals and understood the unique needs and challenges of family reunions. The property photos showed a sprawling Victorian mansion with wraparound porches, a game room for the kids, and enough parking for multiple families arriving in cars, RVs, and rental vehicles. "I absolutely love hosting family reunions," Jennifer had written. "My property was specifically chosen because it can comfortably accommodate large groups while still feeling like a home rather than a hotel or event space." She'd included detailed floor plans showing bedroom arrangements, accessibility features for elderly guests, and a fully equipped kitchen capable of feeding large groups with multiple refrigerators and commercial-grade appliances. Jennifer offered to arrange grocery delivery before their arrival, recommended local activities suitable for all ages, and even suggested catering services for a special reunion dinner that would allow the family to focus on spending time together rather than cooking. The listing included photos of previous family gatherings at the property, showing happy multi-generational groups enjoying the expansive living areas and beautiful lakefront setting. Jennifer's reviews consistently praised her attention to detail and ability to make large groups feel welcomed and comfortable. One review described how she'd helped an elderly guest who had mobility issues, while another mentioned her arranging a surprise birthday cake for a family member's milestone celebration during their stay. Maya spent weeks coordinating with Jennifer to plan the perfect reunion weekend. Jennifer provided detailed information about local attractions, from gentle hiking trails suitable for her grandmother to adventure parks for the teenagers and middle ground activities that would appeal to the busy parents. She offered to arrange fishing guides for the men who wanted to spend time on the lake, spa services for the women who preferred relaxation, and even suggested a local photographer to capture formal family portraits on the mansion's grand staircase and lakefront setting. The planning process felt seamless. Jennifer anticipated every need and provided solutions before Maya even thought to ask questions. She sent Maya a comprehensive welcome packet with local emergency services information, grocery stores, and restaurant recommendations categorized by price range and cuisine type to accommodate different family preferences and dietary restrictions. Jennifer even offered to coordinate with local businesses to arrange group discounts for activities and meals, understanding that reunions involve significant expenses for every family involved. The attention to detail convinced Maya that this would be their best family reunion yet, finally living up to the expectations and memories from their childhood gatherings. The family had contributed $6,400 for the week-long rental, with Maya coordinating payments from relatives across 5 different states, each family contributing based on their financial situation and number of attendees. Jennifer had requested payment 6 months in advance to secure their preferred dates during peak summer season, explaining that lakefront properties in the area booked up quickly and required early confirmation for large groups. Maya felt proud of her organizational skills as family members praised her choice and began making travel arrangements. Her aunt even upgraded her flight to arrive a day early, excited to help with meal preparation in the mansion's gourmet kitchen and spend extra time with relatives she hadn't seen in years. Jennifer continued to provide excellent service throughout the planning process, sending weather updates, local event calendars, and even arranging for a grocery delivery service to stock the kitchen with essentials before their arrival. She provided customized recommendations based on family member ages and interests, from baby-proofing supplies for the toddlers to comfortable seating options for the elderly relatives. The convoy of family cars arrived at the lakefront address on a perfect Saturday morning in July, with everyone excited and well-rested after the journey. Maya's excitement turned to horror as they pulled up to a dilapidated cabin that looked nothing like the photos. The Victorian mansion was actually a rundown fishing shack with peeling paint, broken windows, and a dock that had partially collapsed into the lake years earlier. Her grandmother took one look at the sagging porch and declared it unsafe. "There's no way I'm setting foot in that death trap," she said firmly, her walker wobbling on the uneven gravel driveway. A local resident came out of the neighboring property, shaking his head sympathetically when he saw the large group of confused families. "Another rental scam victim," he said sadly. "That cabin's been condemned for 2 years. The county keeps posting notices, but people keep showing up thinking they've rented it. Happens every few weeks during summer season." Maya's hand shook as she tried calling Jennifer's number, disconnected. Her family stood around their packed cars, 3 generations of relatives who had traveled hundreds of miles for a reunion that couldn't happen. The immediate aftermath was chaotic and heartbreaking. Maya's uncle drove to the nearest town to search for alternative accommodations while her cousins tried to calm the crying toddlers who didn't understand why they couldn't go swimming like promised. Her elderly relatives, who had been looking forward to this reunion for months and had saved money they couldn't afford to lose, sat in lawn chairs someone had brought, looking defeated and exhausted. "How could you let this happen, Maya?" her aunt demanded, frustration and disappointment clear in her voice. "We trusted you to handle this properly." The weight of responsibility and failure crushed down on Maya as she realized that 25 people were now stranded with nowhere to stay during peak tourist season. They ended up scattered across 3 different hotels 40 miles away from the lake, their reunion weekend fragmented and expensive. The hotel costs ate through their vacation budgets, and several family members had to leave early because they couldn't afford the unexpected expenses. Her grandfather, who had been excited about fishing with his grandsons, spent the weekend sitting in a hotel lobby instead of on a lakefront dock. Maya learned that family reunion scams are particularly devastating because they destroy irreplaceable gatherings that take years to coordinate and may never happen again due to aging relatives and changing family circumstances. The photos Jennifer had used belonged to an upscale resort in Michigan, and the fake reviews were created by a network of scammers who specifically targeted large family groups willing to pay substantial deposits well in advance. Maya's role as the family organizer meant she bore the emotional weight of everyone's disappointment, straining relationships that took months to repair and creating guilt that still affects her family interactions years later. The experience taught her that scammers deliberately target emotional events like family reunions because victims are less likely to be suspicious when planning special occasions meant to bring loved ones together. And the devastating consequences extend far beyond financial loss to include permanent damage to family relationships and cherished traditions. Rebecca's divorce papers had been finalized for exactly 6 months when she decided it was time to reclaim her independence with a solo vacation. The mountain cabin in Colorado looked perfect for her first trip alone in 15 years, rustic but comfortable, surrounded by hiking trails, and far enough from civilization to provide the peace she desperately needed. At $150 per night, it fit perfectly within her newly reduced budget as she navigated single motherhood and a part-time job at the local library. Her therapist had suggested that solo travel might help her rebuild confidence and establish her new identity as an independent woman. The host, Kevin Morrison, had responded to her inquiry with understanding about her situation, mentioning that he often hosted people going through life transitions who needed time to reconnect with themselves. His profile portrayed him as a former park ranger who understood the healing power of nature and solitude. The listing showed cozy interiors with a stone fireplace, a fully equipped kitchen, and a wraparound deck overlooking pine forests that stretched to the horizon. Rebecca had spent hours studying the photos, imagining herself reading by the fireplace and meditating on the deck as she processed her emotions and planned her future. "I completely understand the need for a peaceful retreat," Kevin had written in response to her detailed inquiry about the therapeutic aspects of the location. "My cabin is specifically designed for people who want to disconnect from stress and reconnect with nature. I've hosted many guests who were going through difficult transitions, divorce, career changes, loss, and the mountains have a way of providing clarity and healing that you can't find anywhere else." The reviews consistently praised both the property's tranquil setting and Kevin's respectful approach to guest privacy needs. One reviewer wrote about finding peace after a career change, while another described how the solitude helped them process grief after losing a parent. A particularly touching review from a divorced mother resonated deeply with Rebecca. Kevin's cabin gave me the space I needed to rediscover who I am outside of my marriage. The silence and beauty helped me heal in ways I never expected. Kevin provided detailed information about hiking trails suitable for different fitness levels, local wildlife viewing opportunities, and even suggested mindfulness and meditation spots on the property that were particularly meaningful to guests seeking spiritual renewal. He offered to stock the cabin with organic groceries and local specialties, understanding that Rebecca wanted to avoid unnecessary trips to town during her healing retreat. The photos showed sunrise views from the deck, a reading nook by large windows overlooking the forest, and a hot tub position for optimal mountain views and stargazing. Rebecca felt confident about the booking after weeks of careful planning and consideration. Kevin had provided comprehensive information about preparing for mountain weather, recommended packing lists for different activities, and even suggested local therapists who specialized in outdoor therapy if she wanted professional support during her healing process. She appreciated his sensitivity to her situation without being intrusive, and his messages struck the perfect balance between helpful and respectful of her need for solitude. "I want you to feel completely safe and supported," he'd written, "but also free to experience the healing that comes from being alone with nature." Kevin sent additional resources about solo female travel safety, emergency procedures, and local contact information for everything from medical services to grocery delivery. He provided detailed descriptions of the nearest hospital, local ranger stations, and even gave her the contact information for a female neighbor who lived nearby and could be reached in emergencies. The rental agreement included detailed check-in instructions, property guidelines that emphasized safety and respect for the natural environment, and even suggested daily routines that would maximize the therapeutic benefits of her mountain retreat. He included recommendations for morning meditation practices, hiking schedules that would help her build confidence, and evening reflection activities that would support her emotional healing process. Rebecca paid the $900 for her week-long stay, feeling optimistic about this important step in rebuilding her life, using money she'd saved from her library job and a small contribution from her supportive sister. She arrived at the mountain address after a challenging 3-hour drive up winding roads, excited to finally see the peaceful retreat Kevin had described in such loving detail. The GPS led her through increasingly remote terrain, past stunning mountain vistas that raised her hopes for the healing experience ahead. However, the final coordinates directed her to a construction site where heavy machinery sat abandoned among piles of lumber and concrete blocks. No cabin, no deck, no mountain views, just raw land that had been partially cleared and then apparently abandoned mid-project. Construction debris was scattered across what should have been a pristine natural setting, and the noise from distant machinery destroyed any sense of the peaceful retreat she'd imagined. A construction worker eating lunch nearby noticed her confusion and obvious distress. "You looking for the cabin rental? You're about the 5th person this month," he said sympathetically, shaking his head at the familiar situation. "This is just a building site that's been stalled for years. Owner's been trying to get permits for 2 years, but there's never been any structure here. Environmental restrictions keep shutting down the project." Rebecca's hands trembled as she called Kevin's number, but it went straight to a disconnected voicemail with a generic message that didn't even mention his name. The nearest town was 40 minutes away down treacherous mountain roads, and all the hotels were booked due to a mountain biking festival that Kevin had never mentioned in his detailed local information. Rebecca spent her healing retreat sleeping in her car at a truck stop, the exact opposite of the peaceful solitude she desperately needed to process her divorce and rebuild her confidence. The truck stop was noisy, brightly lit, and filled with strangers, everything that triggered her post-divorce anxiety about safety and vulnerability. She barely slept, jumping at every sound and constantly checking that her car doors were locked. The experience destroyed her confidence in traveling alone and reinforced her feelings of vulnerability during an already difficult time in her life. Instead of the empowering solo adventure she'd planned, the scam made her feel more helpless and foolish than ever. When she finally returned home, she was embarrassed to tell her therapist and sister what had happened, feeling stupid for believing in Kevin's promises of healing and renewal. Kevin had stolen photos from a luxury mountain resort in Montana and created fake reviews targeting people going through personal crises who were less likely to be suspicious or thorough in their research. The scam specifically preyed on divorced women, widows, and people recovering from trauma who were seeking isolation and healing during vulnerable periods. Police investigation revealed that Kevin Morrison was actually a network of scammers who had studied therapy and self-help websites to create convincing profiles that would appeal to people in emotional distress. Rebecca's week of self-discovery became a week of additional trauma, and she never attempted solo travel again, convinced that her judgment couldn't be trusted. The incident set back her emotional recovery by months, requiring additional therapy sessions to process both the original divorce trauma and the new feelings of victimization and betrayal. The financial loss forced her to delay other important life changes like moving to a better apartment for her children and starting the art classes she'd planned as part of rebuilding her identity. 2 years later, Rebecca still struggles with trusting her own judgment and has never attempted another solo adventure, remaining dependent on others for validation and support in ways that continue to limit her personal growth and independence. The experience taught her that scammers deliberately target vulnerable people during major life transitions, exploiting their emotional needs and reduced decision-making capacity during times of stress and change, often causing psychological damage that extends far beyond the immediate financial loss. Antonio's construction crew had been working overtime for 8 months straight, and he'd promised his team a well-deserved getaway to celebrate completing their biggest project of the year, a 40-story downtown office complex that had challenged every skill they possessed. The beach house in the Outer Banks looked perfect for their group of 12 hardworking men who deserved luxury after months of physical labor in dangerous conditions. These weren't just employees to Antonio. They were his brothers who had worked together for over 5 years, sharing everything from family problems to financial struggles while building some of the city's most important structures. At $600 per night split among everyone, it was affordable for working-class guys who rarely splurged on themselves, representing weeks of overtime pay they'd all agreed to save for this special celebration. The host, Captain James Sullivan, seemed to understand blue-collar workers and their desire for a no-frills good time after months of early mornings and dangerous work conditions. His profile indicated he was a former fishing boat captain who now rented his family property to groups who appreciated authentic coastal experiences rather than fancy resort amenities. The listing showed a spacious house with multiple bedrooms, a large deck for barbecuing, and direct beach access perfect for fishing and relaxation after months of urban construction sites. "I love hosting hard-working folks who deserve a real break," Captain Sullivan had written in response to Antonio's detailed inquiry about the property's suitability for a construction crew celebration. "My house is designed for groups who want to relax, fish, and enjoy good food without any fancy nonsense or pretentious amenities. I've hosted construction crews, military units, firefighter companies, and other groups who work hard and play hard, and I understand exactly what you need for a perfect vacation." The reviews consistently praised the property's practical amenities and Captain Sullivan's understanding of what working men needed for a perfect vacation. One review described an incredible fishing trip arranged by the host for a plumbing crew, while another mentioned how he'd recommended the best local seafood restaurants and helped a group of electricians plan activities that fit their budget and interests. A particularly relevant review from a roofing crew stated, "Captain Sullivan treated us like family and made sure we had everything we needed for the best vacation of our lives." Captain Sullivan provided detailed information about fishing charters, local bars with reasonable prices and good food, and even offered to arrange transportation from the airport for crews arriving from out of state. He mentioned having connections with local fishing guides and charter boat captains who offered group discounts, and promised to ensure the group had access to the best fishing spots and authentic local experiences that tourists never discovered. Antonio felt confident booking after Captain Sullivan offered to arrange everything from grocery delivery to fishing equipment rental, understanding that his crew worked long hours and wouldn't have time for complicated vacation planning. The host understood that these men worked physical jobs that left them exhausted, so he offered comprehensive packages that included meals, activities, and transportation arrangements that would allow them to truly relax. Captain Sullivan's messages were straightforward and practical, focusing on fishing opportunities, local seafood restaurants, and relaxation rather than fancy amenities the crew wouldn't care about or appreciate. "You guys have earned this break," he'd written, "and I want to make sure every detail is handled so you can focus on enjoying yourselves and celebrating your hard work." He provided detailed weather information, fishing reports that showed the best times for different species, and even suggested the best times for different types of fishing based on tides and seasonal patterns. The rental agreement included access to fishing equipment, beach chairs, grilling supplies, and even a boat for offshore fishing, everything the crew needed for a perfect getaway. Captain Sullivan sent additional information about local dive bars, seafood markets where they could buy fresh catch, and even arranged for a local charter captain to take them on a deep-sea fishing expedition at a group discount rate. Antonio collected $2,400 from his team, money they'd saved from overtime work and were excited to spend on their first real vacation in years, representing significant sacrifice from men who lived paycheck to paycheck but wanted to celebrate their achievement together. The crew arrived at the Outer Banks address in 2 rental vans, tired from the 8-hour drive but excited about their beach week and the chance to finally relax after months of dangerous, demanding work. They'd been talking about this trip for weeks, planning fishing competitions, discussing which local restaurants to try, and looking forward to the first vacation most of them had taken in years. The address led to an empty lot with no trespassing signs and overgrown dunes where a house had apparently been demolished years earlier. The lot was surrounded by construction barriers and warning signs about unstable ground, creating an ironic parallel to their daily work environment when they'd hoped for pristine beaches and relaxation. A local surfer who had been watching them from nearby confirmed their worst fears with sympathy and frustration. "That house got destroyed in a hurricane 3 years ago," he explained, shaking his head at another group of disappointed visitors. "The lot's been empty ever since, and the county won't let anyone build here because of erosion issues. I've seen dozens of groups show up here thinking they rented this place." Antonio's heart sank as he realized he'd have to tell his hard-working crew that their anticipated vacation was ruined, and these men had trusted him with their savings and precious vacation time. The crew stood around their vans, still in work clothes, looking at the empty lot where their beach house should have been, the excitement of the morning replaced by confusion and growing anger. They ended up cramped in budget motels an hour inland from the beach, their vacation split between 3 different locations because no single hotel could accommodate their group during peak season. The motels were expensive, uncomfortable, and nothing like the beach house experience they'd planned and saved for. Instead of cooking meals together and bonding as a team, they were scattered across different rooms, eating fast food, and watching their vacation fund disappear on overpriced accommodations. Captain Sullivan had used photos from a luxury rental in the Florida Keys and created fake reviews targeting working-class groups who book together and pay large deposits well in advance. The scam specifically targeted blue-collar workers who had limited vacation options, less experience with rental fraud, and were less likely to have resources for legal recourse or sophisticated verification methods. The sophisticated operation included fake fishing reports, stolen photos from multiple coastal properties, and fabricated testimonials from other construction and military groups designed to build trust with working-class victims. Antonio's leadership reputation with his crew was permanently damaged, and several men struggled financially after losing their vacation savings that represented weeks of overtime work. Some crew members blamed Antonio for not being more careful with their money, creating tension and mistrust that affected their working relationships for months. The stress of letting down his team affected Antonio's job performance and personal relationships, and the crew never attempted another group vacation, their trust in shared planning permanently shattered. The experience taught him that scammers deliberately target working-class groups who have fewer protections and less experience with vacation rental fraud, exploiting their trust, limited resources, and strong group loyalty during rare opportunities for leisure and celebration that may never come again in their demanding, physically exhausting careers. Graduation day at Columbia Medical School had been everything Aisha had dreamed of during 4 grueling years of study, sleepless nights, and constant pressure to excel in one of the most demanding academic programs in the world. To celebrate this monumental achievement, she'd planned a post-graduation vacation with her closest medical school friends before they scattered across the country for residency programs that would consume the next several years of their lives. The luxury apartment in Barcelona looked perfect for their group of 6 newly minted doctors who wanted to experience European culture and history before beginning the demanding years of residency training that would leave little time for travel or cultural exploration. At $400 per night for the entire apartment, it fit within their budget despite their massive student loan debts that would follow them for decades. The host, Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, seemed to understand medical professionals and their unique needs for relaxation, intellectual stimulation, and cultural experiences that would broaden their perspectives as future physicians. Her profile indicated she was a retired cardiologist who enjoyed hosting medical students and young doctors, understanding their financial constraints, academic pressures, and the intense dedication required to complete medical education. "I absolutely love hosting medical professionals," Dr. Rodriguez had written in response to Aisha's detailed inquiry about the apartment's suitability for a group of new physicians celebrating their graduation. "Having spent 30 years in cardiology myself, I understand how important it is for young doctors to experience life outside the hospital before residency begins and consumes every aspect of your existence. My apartment is designed for educated professionals who appreciate culture, good food, and authentic European experiences that will enrich your understanding of the world and make you better physicians." The reviews consistently praised both the property's sophisticated amenities and Dr. Rodriguez's understanding of medical professional schedules, stress levels, and intellectual curiosity. One review described how she'd arranged private tours of local medical museums and historic hospitals, while another mentioned her recommendations for restaurants that accommodated their budget constraints and dietary preferences learned during years of hospital cafeteria meals. A particularly relevant review from a group of residents stated, "Dr. Rodriguez understood exactly what we needed: sophisticated experiences that would educate and inspire us, combined with relaxation that helped us decompress from years of medical school stress." Dr. Rodriguez provided detailed information about Barcelona's medical history, cultural attractions that would appeal to their scientific minds, and even offered to arrange meetings with local physicians for professional networking opportunities that could benefit their careers. She understood that this might be their last vacation for years and wanted to make it exceptional, educational, and memorable. Aisha felt confident about the booking after Dr. Rodriguez demonstrated deep knowledge of medical training and the unique challenges facing young physicians entering residency programs. The host offered comprehensive cultural recommendations, from historical medical sites like old hospitals and anatomy theaters to contemporary art museums that would appeal to their educated interests and scientific curiosity. Dr. Rodriguez sent detailed neighborhood guides with historical context, restaurant recommendations categorized by price and cuisine type, and even suggested day trips to other Spanish cities that would maximize their cultural experience and exposure to European medical traditions. She provided practical information about local healthcare facilities, pharmacy locations where they could purchase any needed medications, and emergency services, details that appealed to their medical training and practical mindset developed through years of clinical education. The rental agreement included access to high-speed internet for any residency-related communications that might arise, a fully equipped kitchen for preparing healthy meals that would support their wellness after years of poor eating habits during medical school, and even suggested reading materials about Spanish medical history and contributions to modern medicine. Aisha collected $2,400 from her friends, money they'd saved from part-time work, family gifts, and small stipends. Excited about their final adventure before the demanding years of residency training began and consumed their personal lives. The group arrived in Barcelona exhausted but excited after their transatlantic flight, ready to explore European culture and celebrate their remarkable achievement after years of sacrifice, study, and delayed gratification. They'd spent the flight discussing their upcoming residency programs, sharing excitement about finally practicing medicine, and planning their week of cultural exploration and relaxation. The address Dr. Rodriguez had provided led to a construction site in the middle of a major urban renovation project, with cranes and scaffolding surrounding empty lots where buildings had been demolished for a massive development project. Construction barriers blocked access to the entire area, and the noise from heavy machinery created chaos rather than the sophisticated cultural experience they'd anticipated. A local cafe owner explained in broken English, gesturing sympathetically at their obvious disappointment that the entire block had been demolished 6 months earlier for a major development project, and no residential buildings had existed there for years. The cafe owner had seen many confused tourists arrive with rental confirmations for addresses that no longer existed, victims of increasingly sophisticated rental scams targeting educated professionals. Aisha's heart sank as she realized their carefully planned celebration was ruined, and she'd failed to create the perfect send-off before they began their separate residency programs in different cities across the country. They ended up scattered across different hostels and budget hotels throughout the city, their sophisticated European adventure replaced by stress, disappointment, and logistical nightmares that consumed their limited vacation time. The available accommodations were either far from cultural attractions, prohibitively expensive, or completely unsuitable for their group's needs and interests. Instead of the cohesive cultural experience they planned, they spent their time coordinating between different locations, dealing with varying check-in procedures, and trying to meet up for planned activities while staying in separate areas of the city. Dr. Rodriguez had used photos from a luxury apartment in Madrid and created fake reviews targeting medical professionals who had limited time for extensive research due to their academic demands and upcoming residency obligations. The scam specifically targeted newly graduated professionals who were transitioning between major life phases and had saved money for important celebrations that marked significant achievements. The sophisticated operation included fake medical credentials, stolen photos from multiple Spanish properties, and fabricated testimonials from other medical groups designed to build trust with victims who valued professional credentials and peer recommendations. Aisha's reputation as the organizer was damaged among her closest friends, creating tension during what should have been a joyful celebration of their shared achievement. The financial loss affected her ability to purchase necessary items for residency, including professional clothing, medical equipment, and moving expenses for relocating to her residency program. Several group members struggled to afford the last-minute hotel costs, forcing them to cut their vacation short and return home disappointed and financially stressed. The experience created lasting resentment within their friend group and damaged relationships that had sustained them through the challenges of medical school. 2 years later, their medical school class reunion was awkward and strained, with the Barcelona incident still affecting their friendships and trust in group planning. The experience taught her that scammers deliberately target professional groups during major transitions, exploiting their trust, limited time for verification, and desire to celebrate important achievements with meaningful experiences that mark significant life milestones. The retirement party at the firehouse had been emotional, with Chief Rodriguez receiving a standing ovation from 3 decades of colleagues who respected his leadership and dedication to protecting their community through countless emergencies and dangerous situations. To celebrate his transition to civilian life after 30 years of service, his wife Maria had planned a romantic getaway to Napa Valley, their first real vacation in years without the constant stress of emergency calls interrupting their time together. Throughout his career, family vacations had been repeatedly interrupted by major fires, natural disasters, and other emergencies that required his immediate attention and leadership. The vineyard cottage looked perfect for a couple rediscovering each other after years of being married to the fire department and the unpredictable demands of public safety. At $250 per night, it represented a significant splurge for a fire chief's pension, but Maria felt her husband deserved luxury and relaxation after risking his life for others and sacrificing family time for public service. The host, Vincent Castellano, seemed to understand the unique challenges faced by first responders and their families, including the stress, irregular schedules, and emotional toll of emergency services work. His profile indicated he was a former police detective who now owned vineyard properties and specialized in hosting retired public servants who needed peaceful retreats to transition from high-stress careers to retirement leisure. "I have tremendous respect for first responders," Vincent had written in response to Maria's inquiry about accommodations suitable for a retiring fire chief and his wife. "Having served in law enforcement myself for 25 years, I understand the sacrifices you and your families make, the stress you carry, and the difficulty of transitioning from a career dedicated to protecting others. I want to provide the perfect environment for reconnecting and relaxation after decades of service to your community." The reviews consistently praised both the property's romantic amenities and Vincent's understanding of first responder culture, stress, and the challenges of retirement transitions. One review described a perfect anniversary celebration for a retired police couple, while another mentioned how Vincent had arranged private wine tastings and restaurant reservations that respected their budget constraints and understood their need for quiet, peaceful experiences. A particularly touching review from a retired paramedic couple stated, "Vincent understood exactly what we needed: peace, quiet, and the chance to remember who we were as a couple before decades of emergency calls consumed our lives." Vincent provided detailed information about local wineries that offered tours specifically designed for couples, romantic restaurants that specialized in intimate dining experiences, and couples activities that would help them transition from high-stress careers to retirement leisure and rediscover their relationship outside the demands of public service. He understood that first responders often struggled with post-career adjustment and offered recommendations for peaceful activities that would support their mental health during this major life change and identity transition. Chief Rodriguez felt confident about the booking after Vincent demonstrated genuine understanding of first responder challenges and retirement transitions that many civilians couldn't comprehend. The host offered comprehensive recommendations for wine tours, romantic dinners, and relaxation activities that would help them reconnect as a couple after years of shift work, emergency stress, and interrupted family time due to the unpredictable demands of fire department leadership. Vincent sent detailed information about local spas that specialized in stress relief, quiet hiking trails through vineyards that would provide peaceful reflection opportunities, and intimate restaurants that would accommodate their desire for privacy and romance after decades of public service and community visibility. He provided practical information about the cottage's amenities, local medical facilities, and even offered to arrange grocery delivery so they could focus entirely on each other without logistical concerns. The rental agreement included access to a private hot tub, wine cellar tastings with educational components, and suggested daily itineraries designed specifically for retired couples learning to enjoy leisure time together and rediscover their relationship after careers that demanded constant sacrifice and dedication. Maria paid the $1,750 for their week-long stay using money they'd saved from the chief's retirement bonuses and ceremony gifts. Excited about finally having uninterrupted time with her husband without the possibility of emergency calls destroying their plans. They arrived in Napa Valley on a perfect spring afternoon, holding hands and feeling like newlyweds after 30 years of marriage interrupted by emergency calls, long shifts, and the constant stress of public safety responsibilities. For the first time in decades, Chief Rodriguez had turned off his phone and radio, ready to focus entirely on his wife and their future together. The address Vincent had provided led to a vineyard under foreclosure, with legal notices posted on gates and property seized signs attached to the fence warning visitors to stay away. The vineyard had been abandoned for months, with overgrown grapevines and a farmhouse that was clearly uninhabitable, surrounded by the remnants of what had once been a beautiful property. A neighboring vintner noticed their confusion and disappointment, explaining that the property had been in bankruptcy proceedings for over a year, and no rental activities had ever been legally operated there. Chief Rodriguez's jaw tightened with the same controlled anger he'd felt when investigating arson cases. Someone had deliberately destroyed something precious and violated the trust of people who deserved better. They ended up in a chain hotel near the highway, their romantic wine country retreat replaced by the sound of traffic and the stress of unexpected expenses that strained their fixed retirement income. Vincent had used photos from an upscale Sonoma resort and created fake reviews targeting retired first responders who were vulnerable during major life transitions and unfamiliar with luxury travel scams. The scam specifically exploited the trust and honor-based mindset that made them effective public servants but also made them susceptible to fraud from people who preyed on their service-oriented values. Maria's carefully planned romantic getaway became another source of stress during an already challenging retirement transition, and the financial loss forced them to cancel other retirement plans they'd been looking forward to for years. The experience taught them that scammers deliberately target retirees and first responders, exploiting their service-oriented mindset and limited experience with luxury travel fraud during vulnerable periods of life change and adjustment when they're trying to rediscover their identity outside their careers. Dr. Rodriguez sent detailed neighborhood guides, restaurant recommendations categorized by price and cuisine, and even suggested day trips to other Spanish cities that would maximize their cultural experience. She provided practical information about local healthcare facilities, pharmacy locations, and emergency services, details that appealed to their medical training and practical mindset. The rental agreement included access to high-speed internet for any residency-related communications, a fully equipped kitchen for preparing healthy meals, and even suggested reading materials about Spanish medical history. Aisha collected $2,400 from her friends, money they'd saved from part-time work and graduation gifts, excited about their final adventure before the demanding years of residency training began. The group arrived in Barcelona exhausted but excited after their transatlantic flight, ready to explore European culture and celebrate their achievement. The address Dr. Rodriguez had provided led to a construction site in the middle of a major urban renovation project. Cranes and scaffolding surrounded empty lots where buildings had been demolished, and construction barriers blocked access to the entire area. A local cafe owner explained in broken English that the entire block had been demolished 6 months earlier for a major development project, and no residential buildings had existed there for years. Aisha's heart sank as she realized their carefully planned celebration was ruined. These were her closest friends from medical school, and she'd failed to create the perfect send-off before they began their separate residency programs. They ended up scattered across different hostels and budget hotels, their sophisticated European adventure replaced by stress and disappointment. Dr. Rodriguez had used photos from a luxury apartment in Madrid and created fake reviews targeting medical professionals who had limited time for extensive research due to their academic demands. The scam specifically targeted newly graduated professionals who were transitioning between life phases and had saved money for important celebrations. Aisha's reputation as the organizer was damaged, and the financial loss affected her ability to purchase necessary items for residency. The experience taught her that scammers deliberately target professional groups during major transitions, exploiting their trust, limited time for verification, and desire to celebrate important achievements with meaningful experiences. The retirement party at the firehouse had been emotional, with Chief Rodriguez receiving a standing ovation from 3 decades of colleagues who respected his leadership and dedication. To celebrate his transition to civilian life, his wife Maria had planned a romantic getaway to Napa Valley, their first real vacation in years without the stress of emergency calls interrupting their time together. The vineyard cottage looked perfect for a couple rediscovering each other after years of being married to the fire department. At $250 per night, it represented a significant splurge for a fire chief's pension, but Maria felt her husband deserved luxury after risking his life for others. The host, Vincent Castellano, seemed to understand the unique challenges faced by first responders and their families. His profile indicated he was a former police officer who now owned vineyard properties and specialized in hosting retired public servants who needed peaceful retreats. "I have tremendous respect for first responders," Vincent had written. "Having served in law enforcement myself, I understand the sacrifices you and your families make, and I want to provide the perfect environment for reconnecting and relaxation. My cottage is designed specifically for couples who need to rediscover romance away from the stresses of public service." The reviews consistently praised both the property's romantic amenities and Vincent's understanding of first responder culture and stress. One review described a perfect anniversary celebration for a retired police couple, while another mentioned how Vincent had arranged private wine tastings and restaurant reservations that respected their budget constraints. Vincent provided detailed information about local wineries, romantic restaurants, and couples' activities that would help them transition from high-stress careers to retirement leisure. He understood that first responders often struggled with post-career adjustment and offered recommendations for peaceful activities that would support their mental health during this major life change. Chief Rodriguez felt confident about the booking after Vincent demonstrated genuine understanding of first responder challenges and retirement transitions. The host offered comprehensive recommendations for wine tours, romantic dinners, and relaxation activities that would help them reconnect as a couple after years of shift work and emergency stress. Vincent sent detailed information about local spas, quiet hiking trails, and intimate restaurants that would accommodate their desire for privacy and romance. He provided practical information about the cottage's amenities, local medical facilities, and even offered to arrange grocery delivery so they could focus entirely on each other. The rental agreement included access to a private hot tub, wine cellar tastings, and suggested daily itineraries designed specifically for retired couples learning to enjoy leisure time together. Maria paid the $1,750 for their week-long stay using money they'd saved from the chief's retirement bonuses, excited about finally having uninterrupted time with her husband. They arrived in Napa Valley on a perfect spring afternoon, holding hands and feeling like newlyweds after 30 years of marriage interrupted by emergency calls. The address Vincent had provided led to a vineyard under foreclosure, with legal notices posted on gates and property seized signs attached to the fence. The vineyard had been abandoned for months, with overgrown grapevines and a farmhouse that was clearly uninhabitable. A neighboring vintner explained that the property had been in bankruptcy proceedings for over a year, and no rental activities had ever been legally operated there. Chief Rodriguez's jaw tightened with the same anger he'd felt when investigating arson cases. Someone had deliberately destroyed something precious. They ended up in a chain hotel near the highway, their romantic wine country retreat replaced by the sound of traffic and the stress of unexpected expenses. Vincent had used photos from an upscale Sonoma resort and created fake reviews targeting retired first responders who were vulnerable during major life transitions. The scam specifically exploited the trust and honor-based mindset that made them effective public servants, but also made them susceptible to fraud. Maria's carefully planned romantic getaway became another source of stress during an already challenging retirement transition. The experience taught them that scammers deliberately target retirees and first responders, exploiting their service-oriented mindset and limited experience with luxury travel fraud during vulnerable periods of life change and adjustment. Single motherhood had been challenging enough before Emma's ex-husband stopped paying child support, but she was determined to give her 8-year-old daughter Sophie the beach vacation they'd promised themselves once finances improved. Sophie had been asking about their special trip for months, especially after seeing her classmates' vacation photos on social media and hearing stories about family adventures she'd never experienced. The condo in Myrtle Beach looked perfect for a mother-daughter bonding trip: 2 bedrooms, a pool, and walking distance to family-friendly attractions that would create positive memories during a difficult time in both their lives. At $120 per night, it stretched her budget significantly, but seemed manageable for their week-long getaway, representing money she'd saved by working double shifts at the diner and skipping her own needs for months. The host, Patricia Williams, had responded to her inquiry with understanding about single mothers and their unique travel challenges, including safety concerns, budget constraints, and the need for child-friendly accommodations. Her profile indicated she was a grandmother who specialized in hosting families with children, understanding both the financial limitations and safety concerns that single mothers faced when traveling alone with their children. The listing showed child-friendly amenities, a secure building with gated access, and a pool area designed specifically for family enjoyment and safety. I completely understand the challenges single mothers face. Patricia had written in response to Emma's detailed inquiry about the property's suitability for a mother traveling alone with a young child. As a grandmother myself, I know how important it is to create special memories with your children, especially when you're doing it all on your own. I've designed my condo specifically for families who want safe, affordable, and fun accommodations, and I've hosted many single mothers over the years who need both relaxation and child-friendly activities. The reviews consistently praised both the property's family amenities and Patricia's understanding of single mothers' concerns about safety, entertainment, and creating meaningful experiences on limited budgets. One review described how Patricia had provided recommendations for free children's activities and helped a single mother plan a perfect vacation within her means, while another mentioned her going above and beyond to ensure a young mother felt secure and supported in an unfamiliar city. A particularly relevant review from another single mother stated, "Patricia understood exactly what I needed as a mom traveling alone with my kids: safety, affordability, and someone who genuinely cared about making our vacation special." Patricia provided detailed information about local attractions, child-friendly restaurants with reasonable prices, and free activities that would help Emma create a magical vacation within her limited budget. She offered to provide beach equipment, pool toys, and even suggested daily itineraries that would maximize fun while minimizing expenses, understanding that every dollar mattered for a single mother working multiple jobs. Emma felt confident about the booking after Patricia demonstrated genuine understanding of single motherhood challenges and budget constraints that many people couldn't comprehend. The host offered practical recommendations for grocery stores with good prices, emergency medical facilities, and family activities that would help Emma navigate vacation logistics while ensuring Sophie had the fun and adventure she deserved. Patricia sent detailed safety information about the building's security features, pool rules designed specifically for children's protection, and even offered to provide contact information for local babysitting services if Emma needed some adult time to relax. She provided comprehensive practical information about laundry facilities, kitchen equipment for preparing children's meals, and suggested packing lists that would minimize vacation expenses while ensuring Sophie had everything she needed for a perfect beach vacation. The rental agreement included access to beach toys, pool equipment, and even children's books and games for rainy day entertainment, showing Patricia's understanding of what families with children actually needed. Patricia sent additional information about local playgrounds, free children's activities at nearby libraries, and even recommended ice cream shops with reasonable prices that would create special treats without breaking Emma's carefully planned budget. Emma paid the $840 for their week-long stay using money she'd saved from working extra shifts at the diner, tips she'd carefully set aside, and even sold some of her own belongings. Excited about finally providing Sophie with the special vacation she deserved and had been patiently waiting for. They arrived in Myrtle Beach on a sunny Saturday morning, with Sophie chattering excitedly about swimming, building sandcastles, and finally experiencing the beach vacation she'd been dreaming about for months. Sophie had packed her favorite stuffed animal, new swimsuit, and had been counting down the days on a calendar Emma had made for her. The address Patricia had provided led to a parking lot behind a closed restaurant, with no residential buildings visible anywhere in the area and construction equipment scattered around what appeared to be a demolition site. A security guard at a nearby hotel noticed their confusion and obvious distress, taking pity on the mother and young child standing beside their packed car looking lost and heartbroken. "Looking for that condo rental?" he asked sympathetically. "You're about the 10th family this month. That address has never contained residential properties. It's commercial zoning that's been empty for years. I've been telling the police about this scam, but nothing seems to stop it." Emma's heart broke as she watched Sophie's excitement turn to confusion and disappointment, her 8-year-old mind unable to understand why the promised pool and beach weren't where they were supposed to be. "Mommy, where's our special place?" Sophie asked, her lower lip beginning to tremble as she clutched her stuffed animal and looked around the empty parking lot. Emma had to kneel down and explain to her daughter that someone had lied to them, that their vacation wasn't going to happen as planned, watching as Sophie's face crumpled and tears began to flow. She'd worked double shifts to afford this vacation, and now she had to break her daughter's heart and admit that their special trip was ruined. They ended up in a budget motel that consumed their entire vacation fund, with no money left for the activities and experiences Emma had promised. The motel was far from the beach, had no pool, and cost more per night than the fake condo rental would have for their entire week. Patricia had used photos from a luxury beachfront resort and created fake reviews targeting single mothers who were emotionally vulnerable and financially constrained, preying specifically on their love for their children and desire to provide experiences they often couldn't afford. The scam specifically exploited the guilt and determination of single mothers who sacrifice everything to provide special experiences for their children, understanding that they would be less likely to be suspicious when planning something meant to bring joy to their kids. Emma's attempt to create positive memories became another source of trauma for both her and Sophie, who struggled to understand why adults would lie about something so important to a little girl who had been looking forward to her first real vacation. Sophie's disappointment affected her behavior for weeks afterward, and she became suspicious of future promises and plans, having learned at age 8 that adults sometimes lie and that special things can be taken away without warning. The experience taught Emma that scammers deliberately target single parents during emotionally vulnerable times, exploiting their love for their children and their limited resources to create devastating disappointment that affects entire families and damages the trust between parents and children during already difficult circumstances. Thank you for joining me tonight on Drowsy Tales Daily. And may these stories guide you into peaceful sleep with renewed awareness of the importance of vacation rental accountability and protecting travelers from platforms that would exploit their trust during vulnerable planning moments. Sweet dreams. And I'll see you tomorrow night for another collection of fascinating Reddit stories designed to help you drift off to sleep.